Hey everybody, this is Praxis. As we move deeper into difficult times, the people who are in control of our society are going to have an increasingly difficult time trying to control us, the masses. They have a number of levers of control that they can pull out to try to manipulate the situation, and I'm sure that they have been and will continue to try to do that. That's just human nature. If you are in control of a situation, you don't want to lose control of that situation. The reason that they are going to have a greater chance of losing control of the situation is that as people's lives get a little bit less comfortable, people tend to try to look for someone to blame, and the last thing that the people in power want is for the masses to start pointing fingers at them. It might be justified, it might not be justified, but whether it's merited or not, they're not going to want to catch any of that blame. So there are levers of control that they are going to be using to try to make it so that the last person we tend to blame are them. And one of those levers of control I'm seeing used increasingly on media outlets that I'm seeing, and that is to try to get us fighting with each other instead of fighting with those people who are in control that probably have a lot more to do with the situation than all of our peers have to do with it. And one of the ways that they get us fighting with each other is by kind of putting us into different bubbles and giving those bubbles different groups of facts. It was brought to my attention recently that there was some episode of the show The View. I don't watch The View. All I know about it is that there's a number of women. I think it's all women. Maybe guys are on it occasionally. But it's essentially a group of women, and they just kind of chit-chat about things. And it's a way of kind of bubbling away your excess time if you've got more time than you know what to do with. And something that was mentioned by one of these hosts on The View was that they tend to be kind of anti-firearms in general on that show, as is my understanding. Again, I don't watch this stuff, but whenever I see a clip of it, it tends to be this kind of thing. They were talking about how AR-15 ammunition, the caliber 5.56 or .223, it can't be used legitimately for hunting, because if you use it for hunting, it just destroys the animal. The animal essentially just blows up or something like that, and you can't eat it because it's just too powerful, which is set forward as a fact on that show, and it's not really questioned because the audience of that program, they just don't have any world experience to really draw from to realize that that's just completely absurd. The reality with 5.56 or .223 as a hunting caliber ammunition for something like a deer is the problem with it is that it's probably on the small side, and you would risk wounding the animal and not actually taking the animal down, which is problematic for a number of reasons. But it certainly isn't going to blow an animal to smithereens. I guess maybe if you shot a sparrow or something like that, certainly that could happen. But this was put forward as a fact, and an unquestioned fact, and because people just don't have any experience with that type of thing, that are watching that type of show, it just gets accepted, and people just have this incorrect idea, it's a lie, as a fact that they live with. In fact, I was talking to someone just the other day that was under the impression that the rounds that are fired out of an AR-15 are essentially like little bombs, that they have some kind of explosive charge in them. After they're fired, the bullet itself has like an explosive charge, and it hits something and then it explodes. And they picked up this completely fabricated idea from some kind of an outlet like The View. So you don't want to be learning about firearms from The View, because they're mixing a bunch of lies with, maybe there's some truth in there. I guess the idea that an AR-15 rifle does exist, that's a fact. So I guess there are some facts mixed in with the lies on there. But you don't want to be learning about firearms from a media outlet like The View. In the same way that you don't want to be learning about something like anthropogenic climate change from a number of conservative media outlets. One thing that I see over and over and over again, which is stated as a fact on conservative media outlets, is that scientists keep making predictions about what anthropogenic climate change is going to look like, and that those predictions are just so wildly out there that they predicted 20 years ago that the world was going to be a cinder. That is untrue. It's just an untrue statement. I'm sure that there are some wacko scientists that might have said things like that in the past, but I've been following anthropogenic climate change for the past several decades. I've been looking at different forecasts, different models. It's a good idea if you want to be a prepper, to have some sense of where the future is going and kind of get ready for things ahead of time. So the idea of listening to the idea that anthropogenic climate change could be a thing, looking at some of the forecasts and trying to position yourself, at least geographically, if floods are going to be more of an issue in an area, and that's kind of a prediction. You don't want to buy real estate right down near a river. That's just stupid. So, it makes sense to listen to some of these forecasts. I have been, and in terms of the forecasts that I've been listening to, which are kind of the mainstream forecasts, they've been pretty much spot on. And if anything, they've been a little bit on the conservative side, where they were thinking things weren't going to move quite as fast. And yet, on a lot of conservative media outlets, it's just like this fact that's thrown out there in the same way that it's like a fact that you can't go hunting with an AR-15 rifle because it's going to blow a deer apart. It's a fact that scientists are always making predictions about what climate change is going to look like, and they're always way off because they always overblow it and everything. And that's just a fabricated lie. I think lie might be the word to use for that. And we're getting these from different media outlets. One group being fed this set of lies, one group being fed this set of lies. And people, because they just don't have any expertise in a lot of these things, they don't have any way of, judging the veracity of a lot of these sources, because if you're watching The View and someone says that if you fire this bullet at this animal, the animal is going to explode, that sounds kind of like a fact. It sounds pretty black and white. It seems like, it can't be that far off, and yet it's just completely far off. In the same way that, like those conservative media outlets, if they're citing all of these scientific papers, and all these scientific papers had made these predictions that are much worse than what we're actually seeing, that's probably kind of true, right? No, it's not. There are messages that are being sent out that are just making these different groups of people have different set of facts. And when you have two different sets of people, and they live in completely different facts, they live in completely different realities, it's really difficult for those groups of people to kind of communicate with each other, to befriend each other, to talk with each other even. And that's a really great situation if you're an elite, if you're in the ruling class. The last thing you want is all your workers kind of chit-chatting with each other. In fact, a lot of times when a company is hiring people, they have, I forget what it's called because I've never really worked for a large corporation, but or any corporation really. I've always just been kind of a freelance gig kind of guy. But I know that this is something that a lot of people that I know have had to sign on to when they have worked for large companies, some kind of like a non-disclosure kind of thing, where you're not allowed to talk with your coworkers about what you make. Why is that? Is that for the workers' benefit? Like they don't want people being pressured to talk about what they make? No, it's because they don't want people finding out that this person's got a better deal. Because if you know that this person's got a better deal than you did, and this person's got a better deal than you did, what do you think you're going to do? What do you think you're going to do? You're going to go to management and you're like, I realize that you guys are actually willing to pay a lot more than what you've been paying me for this job. I would like to renegotiate with you. I mean, I've got a skill set. I've been here for a while. I'm an asset to you. I know you're paying like 10% more to all these other people. I want to get a piece of that action. The last thing that people in management want is for the people that they are managing to be really communicating with each other, especially when you have a situation where things are going to start getting dicey for everybody. Imagine that you and imagine that I are these elite people. I know when we talk about elites, it gets into the kind of conspiracy theory realm, and I think that a lot of people have the feeling that they almost want to believe that there are people up in the upper echelons and they're kind of pulling all the strings and they're in control of everything. And I don't really believe that. I think that the world is made up of the billions of decisions of all of the individual people, and while there are people who are in power whose decisions have a little bit more influence than other people's decisions, it's not like they're completely controlling the thing. They're the people that are in the wagon, and then there are the horses. And at the moment, us, the masses are kind of those horses, and we're getting a little bit unruly, and it's starting to get difficult for the coach person, the person that's supposed to control the horses, to control us. They're trying the best that they can, but we're getting spooked, and that's going to be a real problem for them. So imagine that you and I are one of those kind of coach master people, where we are, trying to manipulate the situation to our best benefit, and maybe we feel like we're also going to help everyone else along the way. If you want to be positive about it, but the idea is, the last thing we want to do is lose control of the situation. And you got this group of people that you're managing. You and I are managing these people, and we're starting to hear them whisper. And some of them are kind of, they're looking our way, and the expression on their face is not something that we want to be seeing. You know, one way that we can try to make it so that those eyeballs aren't coming at us and they're starting to look at each other is to get some division going into those ranks. Try to get it so people aren't talking to each other. People aren't sharing their salaries. You give them different facts so they can't really communicate with each other. They start seeing each other as the problem. They start seeing each other as the enemy. You know, this could be helpful. We could kind of whisper, it's like, hey, liberals, you know, you heard about those conservatives? All they want to do is just, you know, arm every crazy person, and they want as many school shootings as possible. You know, you hear that rumor about them? Yeah, you know, and the same thing with, you know, the conservatives. We start spreading some rumors with them. Hey, conservatives, you know, you hear all those liberals that they want like every child to be forced to have a sex change operation. You know, you start kind of swirling these rumors around, and I'm sure there are some people in the conservative group that like seeing school shootings. You know, there are crazy people in every group. I'm sure there are some people in that liberal group that, you know, are nuts, and they think that every child should like have a sex change operation. Everyone that's born a boy should be turned into a girl, and vice versa. And I'm sure you'll find people like that. And, you know, we're gonna, you know, send some of our little minions out there. They're gonna get some video with these like really fringe crazy people, and then they're gonna bring it back to us, and then we're gonna reflect that back at the group. And we're gonna be saying, hey, conservatives, look at what this liberal said. This is very representative of the large majority of liberals. We're going to be saying the same thing to the liberals. Hey, look at this crazy thing this conservative said. That's representative of you know, most, if not all, of those conservatives. They're not your friends. That is a great way of staying in control. If you can get people fighting amongst themselves, they're not going to be, you know, turning their eyes up at you as though you're the problem, because the problem's their neighbor, the problem's the person down the street, the problem's the person at the school, the problem's their, their local, whatever. We're going to be seeing an awful lot more of that as things get more and more dicey in our society. People in control know this. For hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, Machiavelli, wrote specifically about these things. And unless you think that, the people who are you're running a lot of these political organizations, unless you think they're completely naive and they've never taken a statecraft course and they've never taken even high school level history courses, if you think that they're unaware of all of these open secrets about how to control people, if you literally think that they're so stupid that they don't know all of these secrets, maybe you shouldn't be watching this video, but anybody with a brain should be able to know that people who are in control, they know these levers of manipulation, and honestly, they'd be crazy not to use them because that's what they do. That's their job, is to try to keep control of the situation. But for you and for I, we have to ask, at what cost? Is it worth it for us to hate our neighbors in order for the elites to kind of keep us under some kind of a control? But what can you and I do about that? That's the big question. Well, there are a lot of things that we can do about that. One thing that we can do is try to vote in. Okay, yeah, I'm going to talk about some real ideas that we can do. What you can do is work on your local individual level. We all the time see people engaging, especially here online, in that kind of negative divisiveness where they're pitting up against each other, and they don't have dialogues in a constructive way that creates anything other than maybe a serotonin boost in their own head. Whenever you see that happening, you have an opportunity to try to interject there and be a bit of a peacekeeper. Find the common ground, because there's usually common ground. You take something like mentioned like school shootings. There is an awful lot of common ground between conservatives and liberals when it comes to school shootings. 100%, I'm going to say 100%. I mean, I'm sure it's 99.999 because it's it's crazy people in every group. But essentially 100% of everyone from both of those groups does not like the idea that kids get killed in schools. There's 100% agreement there. There's some disagreement about how to change that situation, but there's 100% agreement on the goal. In fact, whenever conservatives tend to hear stories about how dangerous the world can be, the last thing they want to be hearing, is the follow-up story to that is, oh, and by the way, the government wants to come in and reduce your ability to protect your individual family from this dangerous world. I mean, what kind of a sales pitch is that? It's like, you come on the news and you tell people the world is very dangerous, there's people getting killed, and by the way, we want to make sure that you can't do anything about it if someone comes to your house and tries to kill you and your kids. There was a recent shooting that happened in Maine, here in New England, and there was a sign on the bowling alley where the shooting happened, and it talked about the idea of let's keep this like a family-friendly environment. and not bring firearms in. Apparently, I've only heard this from one source, so I don't know if this is 100% true, but it sounds like there was a weapons malfunction with that person that went in there to shoot everyone. They popped off one shot and then they kind of jammed up. And if even one person had a pistol in there, that probably could have saved, the majority, if not all of the lives that were lost in that situation. And for conservative people who like the idea of keeping their ability to protect themselves, the last thing they want to be told when they're told that we live in a very dangerous world is that they want their right to protect their family to be stripped from them. Talking about that sign on the front of the bowling alley there, it says, let's keep a family-friendly environment. Well, to a lot of conservative people, one of the basic things that is fundamental to having a family-friendly environment is safety, the safety of you and your children. And for a conservative to be told, you live in a very dangerous world, but we don't want you to be able to protect your children, if a threat arises in front of you, that's kind of a no-starter with a lot of people, because they agree with the liberals that there are a lot of dangerous people out there. They agree with the liberals that they want to prevent those deaths from happening. The disagreement isn't how to get there, but the core ideas that killing a bunch of kids is terrible, total agreement on that. The idea that you want to protect your family, total agreement on that. Again, the disagreement is just on how best to get there. And one thing that makes it really difficult is when people in these different bubbles have these crazy ideas. And it all comes back to our inability to speak with each other and our inability to problem solve with each other, because people in power are poisoning the well and trying to convince us that as opposed to us all being partners in this together, that we're enemies and we should be fighting with each other. So as we go forward, keep that in your mind. Whenever you're seeing divisiveness here online or in any situation, try to be that voice to de-escalate things. Try to be that voice to try to build bridges between people, because that is the only way that we can really solve any of these problems. The elite don't want us doing that. The elite want us squabbling amongst ourselves, so we're not going to turn our attention to, a lot of the failed policies that they've put in. But it's the only way to actually solve all these problems, is for the people to start talking with each other, trusting each other a little bit, having some faith in each other a little bit, and coming to a consensus, because on the vast majority of these things, 99% of us agree on 99% of the questions 99% of the time. It's those fringe things that the politicians and the elite dangle in front of us to keep us fighting with each other. But that's not who we are, or at least that's not who we have to be. I hope you found this helpful, and thanks for watching. Please subscribe for new videos all the time, and if you'd like to support this channel, you can do so either through Patreon or PayPal.